In the summer of 222 BC, on the dusty plain outside the small Peloponnesian town of Sellasia, the ancient world witnessed the death of a legend. For more than 5 centuries, the name Sparta had struck terror into the hearts of Greece. Its red-cloaked warriors had held the pass at Thermopylae, crushed Athens in the Peloponnesian War, and forged the most feared army the Mediterranean had ever seen. Yet on this single afternoon, that army, the last true Spartan field force, would be annihilated not by fellow Greeks bearing grudges centuries old, but by a Macedonian king leading 20,000 hired swords and 90 war elephants. This was the Battle of Sellasia, the day Sparta's dream of resurrection died beneath Macedonian pikes and the thunder of foreign beasts. To understand how Sparta reached this final crossroads, we must travel back 6 years. In 228 BC, a revolutionary king named Cleomenes III had seized power in Sparta and attempted something no Spartan ruler had dared in generations: radical reform. He canceled debts, redistributed land, and, most shockingly, granted citizenship to thousands of perioikoi and even some helots. He tripled the size of the citizen army, re-equipped it with the long Macedonian sarissa instead of the traditional short spear, and trained his new phalangites to fight in the style of Philip and Alexander. By 225 BC, Cleomenes stood at the head of what many believed was a reborn Sparta. He crushed the Achaean League at Mount Lycaeum and Dyme, seized city after city, and seemed poised to restore Spartan hegemony over the Peloponnese. But one power watched Cleomenes rise with growing alarm: the kingdom of Macedon under the young and ambitious Antigonus III Doson. Antigonus was regent for his teenage cousin Philip V, and he had spent years rebuilding Macedonian power after the disastrous reign of Demetrius II. When the Achaean League, led by the brilliant statesman Aratus of Sicyon, begged Macedon for help against Cleomenes, Antigonus saw his chance. In 224 BC, he marched south with a grand alliance: Macedonian phalangites, Greek mercenaries, Illyrian light infantry, Cretan archers, and, most terrifying of all, 90 Indian elephants shipped across the Aegean from the crumbling Seleucid Empire. This was the largest Macedonian army assembled in a generation, and its target was clear: crush Cleomenes and end Sparta's resurgence forever. The two armies met at Sellasia, where the narrow passes between Mounts Evas and Olympus forced the battle into 3 distinct sectors. Cleomenes held the high ground. On his left, his brother Euclides commanded the Spartan perioikoi and allies atop Mount Evas. In the center, Cleomenes himself stood with the reformed citizen phalanx and mercenary infantry on Mount Olympus. On the right, along the banks of the Onis River, his light troops and cavalry waited. Antigonus arrayed his forces with cold Macedonian precision. Opposite Euclides, he placed his Illyrian and Achaean allies. In the center, he massed the elite bronze shield phalangites and the fearsome war elephants. On his own right, facing the river, he stationed the bulk of his mercenary cavalry and Cretan archers under the command of Alexander of the Acropolis. The battle opened with a thunderous charge. Antigonus unleashed his elephants and the bronze shields against Cleomenes' center. The ground shook as the 90 beasts crashed forward, towers bristling with archers on their backs. The Spartan phalangites, though armed with the sarissa and drilled in Macedonian fashion, had never faced such monsters. Panic rippled through their ranks as tusks and trunks tore holes in the hedge of spears. Behind the elephants came the Macedonian pikes, 16 feet of ash and iron lowered in perfect unison. Cleomenes' men fought bravely, but the combined weight shattered their line. At the same moment, on the Spartan left, the Illyrians and Achaeans stormed Mount Evas. Euclides' perioikoi held for hours, fighting with the desperate courage of men defending their homeland, but they were gradually pushed back. When the news reached Cleomenes that his brother's position had collapsed, he knew the battle was lost. He ordered a fighting withdrawal, but the Macedonian cavalry swept across the plain and cut off retreat along the river. Thousands of Spartans and their allies were surrounded and slaughtered. By nightfall, the plain of Sellasia was a graveyard of red cloaks and broken sarissas. Cleomenes escaped with only a handful of men, eventually fleeing to exile in Egypt, where he would take his own life 3 years later. Sparta itself was forced to surrender its last remaining territories, disband its army, and accept permanent Macedonian garrisons. The city that had once made Greece tremble was reduced to a tourist curiosity, its legendary agage abolished, its kingship humiliated. The Battle of Sellasia did not merely end Cleomenes' revolution, it ended Sparta as a military power forever. Never again would a Spartan army take the field in hoplite or phalangite formation. The 20,000 mercenaries and 90 elephants of Antigonus Doson had, in a single afternoon, erased 500 years of legend. The age of the classical Greek city-state died that day beneath the shadow of Macedonian pikes, and the Hellenistic world marched on without it.